So, but yeah, it's Thanksgiving in a few weeks, and then Christmas. My favorite time of year. But yeah, hey, we continue on with Daniel chapter 11 here, and as I said, we're gonna get to look get a lot more up close and studying here with the Antichrist, and and what's things that's going to happen at those times. So just kind of get us, get us back to where, if you remember, I guess, like I said in the introduction, how transition of Daniel's prophecy, and we got to remember, first of all, as I said, as I talked about, we always have to stop and remind ourselves this is not a history, it's not a history lesson, it's fulfilled prophecy. And from, that's what I got right there, from Daniel's point of writing, it was all prophecy. It was all prophecy for him. He was writing about things that were going to happen. And then in verses 2 through 35, that's fulfilled prophecy from our point of view as we read it now. So if you remember, he had Alexander's death led to four generals dividing the kingdom. You had the king of the south, and that was the Ptolemaic dynasties, I guess, for lack of a better term, and then the kings of the north, the Seleucids, I think is how you say that, but at all, the big thing about kings of the north, of course, Antiochus Epiphanes, or Antiochus IV, who is kind of I've been looking for a word for this, and someone, as I was studying, forerunner, like forerunner of the Antichrist, but somebody said template of the Antichrist. I thought that's a little closer, kind of what I was looking for. Just kind of, he's not, but it kind of gives you, a preview of, a watered down version of it, I guess. And when you say that about Antiochus, we saw in his atrocities and the things he's committed, when you say watered down, that's really understating just how bad he is. It was, and how bad, and it just gives, how bad the Antichrist is going to be. So, and then verses 36 through 45 is prophecy that is going to be fulfilled. So that's kind of where we're at right here, and just some interesting things here. And I'm going to have to really rely on anyone in here that has a doctorate in this, because there's some things here as I studied. I was like, seems like people that have some contradictions on some things. So I'd like to get I don't want to speak it when I like it. I usually do the rule of three. I find 3 confirmations of a point of view, and I feel pretty good about it after that point. And I couldn't find that because there was just some things that kind of, this scholar said this, these scholars think this. At the end, we know what's going. We know the final outcome at the end. It's just how, what's the path that's going to be there. And I want to be accurate for sure. So I'm going to have to rely on Brother Nathan there to help us out here on some of this, because it was the first thing I saw, something that was called the law of dual prophecy. Have you heard anything? Or law of double prophecy, where it was talking about basically it was talking about how Antiochus, he's not the Antichrist, but he did a lot of things like it, and how the prophecy of him and then the actual Antichrist is where you have a near prophecy of something that's very similar to what a distant prophecy was, or something. That's just one of the things I don't know if you've heard it, but and I was like, yeah, kind of, because it kind of makes sense. Because one thing, especially now, as I've been teaching, and for me, what I see a lot of stories in the Old Testament is just basically it's almost parallels to Jesus. Somebody had to sacrifice and keep faith, kept faith, and then on the other side, it always turned out in the end, even though when it looked like it was really bad for them, And so I see a lot of, as I look at it, I see that a lot. Now, and again, that's just Scott talking, but if I'm seeing Jesus in the Old Testament, I don't think that's a bad thing, So, But yeah, so as we get to it right here, so we are transitioning here from Daniel from chapter 11, and again, this is very, like I said, a lot of the people talk about just how specific this prophecy is. Again, I think the book, if he's doing, and I'm sure it's been done, you tying Daniel 11 in, or tying Daniel in with Revelation, and just, getting all those dots connected and stuff right there. But so I had a question, and this is one. So would it be like Daniel it's been called the revelation of the Old Testament, correct? Because it's pretty much the same prophecy, right? Why the need for one in the Old Testament, one in the New, you think? I mean, why an account? If Revelation tells it, then what's significant? I mean, I'm not questioning. I was just wondering some of the questions I have.
Well, one, it kind of ties it together.
Yeah.
And then also, when you get the Old Testament account, you've got things that are just about to happen that happen, which lets you know that
Yes.
it's with that proof, you can expect the others to come true.
So
also.
confirmation and affirmation of all that, and so that's kind of where I was thinking right there. And again, and I don't, like I said, and I was wondering right there, is it kind of a nod maybe to, because I'm not an expert on the Jewish faith, but they just say they just have the first 5 books of the Old Testament is what they study as the Bible, or how's it, like Jewish people?
No, they do. They do the whole Old Testament.
They hold it.
Yeah.
So with that, that's kind of one of the things. Is it maybe a nod to kind of get them trying to start nudging them? Hey, this is what's going to happen, and and I don't know. And that's just speculation, but I think it's.
They're still looking for the Messiah to come.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the Antichrist comes, he's going to be doing some of the things that was prophesied that the Messiah would do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's going to be, this is to be a warning that when, I'm supposing that when he comes, that they're to be watching out for that also.
Yeah.
But see, they missed the Messiah the first time. And so now, those that are still looking, and remember, the tribulation, when the Antichrist is here, is referred to as the time of Jacob's trouble. So a lot of that is going to be focused solely upon them. Mm-hmm. And so they're going to have to choose, one or the other. Mm-hmm. And you're going to also have the 144,000 witnesses that are going to be like the Apostle John the Baptist, that are going to be going throughout the whole nation and country and stuff, proclaiming the gospel as it should be. Yeah. So they're going to have, they're going to have to weigh in between both, and so this kind of gives them a forewarning of what's coming.
Yeah, and that's kind of because I thought they studied it, but what is it? The Torah is the first 5. That's what they refer to. Okay, so that's what I was wondering was perhaps that was just kind of some of the thinking I was having right there that. That, and of course, like I said, you got all different, how they missed the Messiah and stuff like that.
Daniel's written in Hebrew and Aramaic, and Revelation's written in Greek.
Yeah.
So, and, like I said, I think you could probably have a discussion on that for weeks, I think. So, but yeah, it's just it's interesting there, because it just got me thinking, like, so why do we got to, and again, I mean, like the prophecy of Jesus Christ, it's prophesied, but it's not it's not told as specific as like what's told in chapter 11, so I kind of got me thinking like, I wonder why that, so anyway, like I said, just things to ponder, I think, but, at the end, it's not questioning, it's just, hey, like I said, just things that, as a human, as a person, studies and stuff, it just makes me wonder, but when it goes back to this, when the Bible repeats something, pretty important, isn't it? So we see that. So let's look into it right here. So I got the king and his character right here, and I got lower, and again, I can't make myself type the word Antichrist with a capital A. I'm just not going to do it. I guess that's my way of defying, I don't know. But anyway, the king and his character in verses 36 through 39 right here. So we see this, just kind of a little bit before we get in, at the end of it right here, if you remember, the last couple of weeks we've gone through kind of for lack of a better term, the family trees of both the Ptolemaic and Seleucid dynasties. Remember, big chart I made right there because I had to figure out who was fighting who there. It took me a while to, all right, who's on whose side here? And then last week it was more, we looked at, Antiochus Epiphanes, and he was Antiochus IV, kind of he defiled the temple and just many of the things there. And one thing to keep in mind right here is remember, king of the north, king of the south, who was always caught in the middle during all those wars of those many years. It was Israel. So, and I had a little thought about something like that as we kind of get into the prophecy that is to come right here. So looking at it, verse 36 where we pick it up, and it says, "And the king will do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished. For that is determined shall be done. Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor the regard of any god, for he shall magnify himself above all. But in his estate shall he honor the God of forces, and the God of whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold and silver, and with precious stones and pleasant things. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory, that he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain." All right, so we got a lot right there. So a few things right here, and just kind of what I found right here, some of the stuff. And the first thing is about the Antichrist, his character. He's absolute in power. That was the first thing I wrote down right there. He is absolute in power. That's going to be one of his characteristics. If we go back when we start seeing in Daniel 7, when like I said, we start seeing prophesies and things like that. Some of the different horns and stuff. I think it says, talks about devouring the whole earth, treading it down, and things of that nature. So he's going to do what he wants, and he's going to do it without hindrance. And then the next thing right there is he exalts himself above all gods. And we've discussed that already. What's he going to do? He's going to claim himself deity. And you worship me, he's going to worship me. And he's going to demand that, matter of fact, he's going to demand to be worshipped by all peoples of the world. And there's going to be consequences if you don't. And that's the threat of death. So we got that. Third thing right there I have, he speaks blasphemies against the one true God. Speaks blasphemies against the one true God. It's not enough that he's going to claim to be deity, but he's also going to speak against God openly, and he's going to condemn. His blasphemies will condemn him, because we're told he's going to carry on his blasphemies until the wrath has been accomplished. And then the next thing, another character here, he'll make a break from forms of worship of the past. We've already said that again, he's going to like I said, stop all, lost my train of thought here. Sacrifice, referring to the temple sacrifices and things of that nature. So he was not going to regard the God of his fathers. And here, this is from verse 37, and this is kind of one of the questions I have. That is not the desire of women. Is that the reference to him being homosexual? Is that where that's coming from, or is that somewhere else?
That's the way I've always taken that.
What's that?
That's the way I've always taken
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And so it was. So we got that. As we continue on, nor regard any God, for he shall magnify himself above all. So it's got, like I said, sounds like a piece of word, don't it? I mean, he's going. he's declared himself God. And so no other religious systems of the past are going to be permitted to exist as a competition to his self-proclamation of deity. And then finally, he worships, and again, worships God. Basically, he worships power. And he does that in two ways, militarily and materially. So that's kind of gets you an idea right there, and of who this person is, or person, not he is going to be, is the way I should say that. So, and again, just from that, just some, I had some different questions right there, or different thoughts there. It was kind of referencing that, but if you recall, I think earlier, you remember when we were talking about I think it was the 70 weeks, the seven, like each week, and again, we said that the week is not what we think of as a week. Each week was a period of 7 years. So there's a reference to that, and again, we look at, when is Antichrist, when is he going to rise? When is he going to rise to true prominence? What's the thing what's going to, I guess, what's one of the big signals right there that he does? I guess I have a hard way to describe it.
Well, after the rapture, there's going to be chaos and confusion. That's going to be his first opportunity to come in and calm things down and give an answer to what's going on, and to establish, I guess, control, or I guess a plan out of the confusion. And he'll be recognized as a great orator, a great leader, and then it'll just start from there.
So he's going to take advantage of the chaos right there. It's like, hey, I know what's going on. Yep. That type deal right there. So it's going to be chaos.
Come in with flattering words.
Yeah. So
that'll be the start.
So right there, time of peril for a lot of people. He's going to tell them what they want to hear, probably. So with that, and isn't there something about he helped broker a peace treaty or something?
Between Israel and I guess the Muslim world.
Yeah.
And they'll begin the construction of the temple.
And that's for like a period about, I think it says something about the first half of that. That week is referencing. Yeah. So then at that point, like I said, we're going to see kind of as we go on right here, he's going to break his word here. But yeah, as I said, I have to watch out, because sometimes what I actually study, and then sometimes things I see, just, as you do research, it's just more, the old people that speculate, hey, Jesus is coming back on this date, this time, and as soon as I hear, I just want to say, you realize that what it's about, no man knows. I mean, as soon as you say that, you're wrong. I mean, what? I just don't understand. Anyway, but so we go from there. So we kind of get a little bit of his of his character, which we're all familiar with and stuff like. This guy's, he's not. I mean, he's Antichrist for a reason. And so we go from there. And now let's look in verses 40 through 43. And so. We go from there. If somebody would read 40 through 43 for us.
And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots, with horsemen, and with many ships. And he shall enter into the countries, and shall overflow and pass over. He shall enter also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon. He shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. You say 43?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
But he shall have power over the treasuries of gold and of silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his steps.
All right, so now we're starting to get an account of some of the military conquests. I think we're going to see right here, and now we kind of get we see, I guess, a return of a theme we saw earlier: King of the North, King of the South, and that's one of the things there some of the things, and I forgot to, I kind of glossed over this, but like in verse 36, you know, the first three, it says, and the king shall do according to his will. You know, there were some people, hey, this is how we know we're not referring to, because anytime they referred to king of the south, king of one of those, it was always phrase, king of the south, king of the north, and then the king that they're referring to 36, that's just one of the key things that shows the transition right here. So as I said, we see the king of the north and the king of the south. And so from there, that leads us into, the discussion. Again, we're talking about the future now. And so who are we referencing right here? So, so I think we got king of the south, king of the north, and I just lost my train again. I'm not having a good morning. So it's referring. Like I said, referring to the future. And the king of the south, and it says, obviously before the king of the south was referencing who? That was
Egypt.
That was Egypt. King of the north was referencing Syria. So we got those, but and again, so we get this kind of coming back around right here. It refers to Egypt, and I wanted to get your opinion on this. And it says also that the king, like for example, for king of the south refers to Egypt, and they say it could also. This commentator here says it may also refer to other nations south of Palestine. Thoughts on that?
All right.
Including Africa, it says.
So you go back to verse 39, let's see, thus shall he live in strongholds, and he shall cause them to rule over many, shall divide the land for gain. Well, let's go back to the first part. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds, or against the greatest, strongest places, with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory. So that is kind of in reference to when the Antichrist comes in, the false prophet comes in, he's empowered there. The beast that was wounded comes back to life, he's empowered. He's proclaiming a God that's empowering him. And they go to war, shall rule over many, shall divide the land for gain. It kind of goes into the 10 toes, the 10 kingdoms, dividing the land. And when you get to verse 39 and 40 kind of ties in the great whore that sitteth upon 7 hills, which is a reference to the old Roman Empire. So the king of the south and the king of the north may not necessarily even be referring to Palestine or the land of Israel or something like that. Because if you go on over, verse 41 said, he shall enter also into the glorious land. So he hasn't got there yet. So where he is located is not in Jerusalem. It's somewhere else. So if that's referring to the if that's referring to the great whore that sitteth, which is the Antichrist, makes his headquarters in Rome, then the king of the north and king of the south is going to be completely different.
It'll be completely different.
Yeah. So then when he enters, and this is where he begins to conquer and begins to spread his influence. This is the last part of the 7 years, the last 3.5 years of the tribulation, after he has declared himself God and all of that. And so when they come against him, it's going to be strong and quick, but it says he shall overflow and pass over, because he's empowered by basically Satan now.
So that makes sense right there because it all depends on what that point of reference for north to south is going to be.
Yeah.
So from what as I said, Israel, obviously that's the reference to the glorious land, and I think that's a good point. He's not there yet, so he's conquering to get there. I guess that'd be an accurate statement.
He's spreading his influence. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, All right, so from there, it's just, like, as I said, just as we refer, and again, I keep looking at the wrong section here in my notes, and so, for me, right there, one thing I jotted down, if it was referencing that, eventually, though, Israel is gonna be caught in the middle again. Is that?
Oh yeah, they're gonna be dead center.
Right there, just like it was before when we talked about the earlier
Yeah.
wars between the Ptolemies and so they're getting caught in the middle again. And, but he's going to, it says here, the Antichrist is going to, he's going to conquer many nations. And it says right here in verse number 41, it says, he shall enter also into glorious land, many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab and the chief of the children of Ammon. So it's kind of referring there to, certain nations. Like I said, the reference, this person here says the reference perhaps be regions in present day Jordan. And it says, among those, however, that don't escape is Egypt. So, he's going to obtain, he's going to obtain the riches. He's going to have power all over all the land right there. And so as I said, he's spreading his influence. He's spreading, he's conquering. And like I said, he's acquired acquisition of great wealth. He's going to have power. Treasures. So, and it says here, this commentator says, the wealth he will acquire to himself will be unimaginable. And it says, plus he will have acquired to himself the Libyans and Ethiopians who will follow at his heels. Or let's see, how's that said right there? Who shall be at his steps. So again, we just get the idea right here in 3 verses. There's a lot of land he's conquering right there. So it kind of gets us now setting up for verses 44 and 45, kind of the conclusion right here. And it says, as we read there, it says, but tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go forth with great fury to destroy and utterly to make away many. And he shall plant the tabernacle of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. And that's right here, and I know we've mentioned this before, but the trouble out of the east and the trouble out of the north, that's referencing China and Russia, is what most people are, it seems to be the thing. Matter of fact, this is a quote here. This is from it says, the news from the east and the north shall trouble him. And it says, this commentator talks about the east may be a reference to China. And he references a Time magazine article from 1965 where it said that China supposedly had an army of over 200 million. And it says the north may be a reference to Russia. And it says these two powers may combine their forces against the Antichrist, which will result him going out to destroy and utterly make away with men. But and then in verse 45 it says he's going to plant his tabernacle, and that's kind of a reference back in the day when conquerors conquered an area. They would dwell in their tents during the campaign. And it says the Antichrist is going to set his tent in the land he conquers, but it will prove to be at the very place of his own destruction. And it's referencing Jerusalem between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. Of course, the glorious holy mountain, Mount Zion, and the seas being the Mediterranean and the Dead Seas. So, and it says, yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. So at that time, and then right there we're going to pick up in verse 12. So from that point through chapter 11. Daniel kind of he starts off right there with a prophecy that happened, just a couple of centuries ahead of his writing. And he finishes off the chapter referencing the tribulation, at least 2,000, 2,300 years later, still, that's going to be fulfilled. So like I said, it's kind of kind of going through that, I think some of the, like I said, we know the what, but what's the how and the actual path of how to get there, that study right there, I think is, like I said, that's one thing I've enjoyed, is the fact, is that side of it there, because I always knew the what was going to happen, but now kind of really getting into the details of the path that's going to be followed to get there, and then kind of, what does they say? What does Jesus say? We'll see the sign of the times, or something, or is it Jesus, or maybe somebody else in the New Testament? It says we'll start seeing. And I know one of the references, I guess when, like I said, of course I wasn't alive, but when Israel became a nation in 1947, I can imagine probably a lot of what that sparked in a lot of studies and stuff like that, or a lot of discussion about sign of the times right there. That was like one of the first steps because I guess Israel hadn't been a nation since Rome conquered it in 70 AD, I guess. So, wow, that's almost 2 millennia. So when we think of it in that terms, Israel forming wasn't that long ago, was it?
Yeah.
So again, it's just one of those where as I read about it and study about it, like I said, it used to scare me, but now that I realize I don't really have to worry about it myself, but it should be motivation for, like I said, for people, for family members, or for, friends, whatever. We don't want them to have to go through that. And, so that, I think that, if we recall where we, as Daniel, the many times that we've studied through Daniel, that he really struggled with this was because he was worried about what his people were going to face. So, but anyway, but yeah, just kind of some of the things there, and like I said, I didn't reference our book too much today because it's pretty much both, but it's just there it is right there, page 269. I knew I read about it. Prophecy and the law of double reference right there. I knew I read somewhere about it. That's what I was referring to a while ago. It says, according to the law of double reference, a prophetic passage of Scripture may seemingly blend two unique events or two persons into one picture. These events or persons may be separated by a significant time period. This means that a single prophecy might have two fulfillments, one dealing with the immediate future and one dealing with the distant future. And many scholars believe this is what we encounter in Daniel 2, where we read of both Antiochus Epiphanes and the future Antichrist. Right? So I knew I'd read somewhere when I stayed there. All I had to do is write down in my notes, page 269 book. And I could have found that earlier. But anyway, so again, right there, as we get into, and here's the other thing, the sign of the prophetic signs of the times. So that's on page 270, and it says, no one can know the day or the hour of the end time events. Yet in the parable of the fig tree, the Lord Jesus indicated that we can know the general season of his coming. The term signs of the times describes specific characteristics and or conditions that will exist in the end times. When we witness these signs, we can deduce that we are in the season of the end times. And for example, it says Jesus warned of the rise of false Christ, nations rising against nations, famines, earthquakes, an increase in lawlessness, and more. And it references Matthew 24, and in 2 Timothy chapter 3. And it kind of quotes that right there. So let's see, I'm going to go to that. I'm going to read it from 2 Timothy 3, 1 through 5. This know that also that in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof, for such turn away. I don't know, does that describe the times we're living in now? Of course, I always laugh when people talk about kids and stuff being, how, I think there's a quote from one one of those Greek philosophers back in the day or whatever. He has a quote where like kids are, and I'm paraphrasing this quote. He said, "Kids are terrible. All they do is run around and cause chaos and stuff." And it was like written back in might have been Socrates or somebody like that. So that's the thing I always tell kids in the classroom. You got to remember, you guys are always the worst generation that's ever been, because I was, and then probably because we was the worst. We was gonna be the fall of all that. What are we we're Generation X, Z. Which one are we supposed to be? Supposedly X. So Gen Z is like the one that's. But anyway, yeah. So I found out as adults that's just our job. Yeah, we were bad, but we're not as bad as those. But anyway, so next week, hopefully we'll conclude Daniel right there, and as I said, it's the first time I've really been able to sit down and go from chapter 1 to chapter 12 myself through a study, leading a study. So it's been good for me. I hope you've got some out of it. We'll conclude it, and I think I'm ready to jump into the New Testament and get back to some love of Jesus study. So, you guys got anything they want to add? All right, we'll close with a word of prayer. Lord, we're thankful for this study and thankful for this time. Thankful for each and every person here. Lord, just ask you to bless their families and bless them, Lord. And Lord, be with those who may not be able to be here for whatever the reason. You know the reason. And Lord, just let them feel that you're in control. And as we studied through Daniel, Lord, that's the thing, Lord, that you're sovereign, you're in control of everything. And Lord, again, just be with us as we go through our worship service. Be Brother Nace brings our message. Lord, just lead, guide, and direct us where everything we do be pleasing to you. And Lord, just let everything we do just give you the glory. Forgive us where we failed. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.